we raised $25 million on this thing. But I credit a lot of the beginnings of my learnings of this industry back to you. And so I just thought it would only make sense if you maybe interviewed me and grilled me a little bit on this. Let's just see where it goes.
Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. My name is Thomas Schreiber. I'm the Director of Marketing here at StrataPT. StrataPT is a single EMR platform and revenue cycle management service for physical, occupational, and speech therapy practices that helps you achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate. Today, we've got a special episode of Strata Stories. Paul Singh, the CEO of StrataPT, talks with Tony Maritato, a physical therapist and the founder of Total Therapy Solutions. Paul and Tony talk through StrataPT's exciting fundraising news, transparency in billing and data sharing, the role of media in marketing and growth, and the future of PT, OT, and speech therapy. If you'd like to learn more about StrataPT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode.
All right, Tony. So let's just jump right into it. I think I met you probably a year. I should have looked at it before I jumped on this with you, but I'm pretty sure I met you a little over a year ago. And the year prior to that, I was just trying to figure out how this business worked. I had kind of quietly come in. I'm like, okay, how do we work? What's the we just were trying to figure out product market fit. We were just trying to figure out how to make it go. We were like at that breaking point. Like most companies at our stage at that time are just like, everything's going crazy. You feel like everything's about to fall apart. Customers are happy, but it just feels like we're on like a spinning plate on top of a long stick. But it wasn't until about, I would say somewhere in the early summer of 2023, where I felt like we had enough people in the right seats doing the right things. And up until that point in our company's history, we had spent a grand total of 1% of our overall revenues on marketing. And I thought to myself, okay, yeah, I could do what all the other companies in our space do. They spend lots of money on conferences and spend a lot of money on, I don't know, I just feel like they just light it on fire on the weekends and it somehow does it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I'd like to go down the path of content and just, basically document how I learned about PT and OT and speech. And so long story short, I don't remember exactly whether I cold emailed you or how it all happened, but you were either too nice or too naive to say no to me. And you jumped on a call with me. And anyway, the reason I want to circle back with you on this is that we just announced that we raised $25 million on this thing. But I credit a lot of the beginnings of my learnings of this industry back to you. And so I just thought it would only make sense if you maybe interviewed me and grilled me a little bit on this. Let's just see where it goes. So with that, Tony, thanks for getting me here or getting us here. And now I'll step aside and let you grill me. Let's see where this goes.
Well, like always, Paul, you were just far, far, far too kind and too gracious. I mean, I think that's got to be what makes you such a good CEO. I've got family that are CEOs of different companies, and I think about it all the time. There's something unique about a successful CEO's character, and it's genuine. It's genuine curiosity. It's genuine kindness. I think you guys get a bad rap sometimes in the media, but truthfully, I look at my family members, I look at you and other examples, and you guys are just incredible. So for context, for people who are watching who might not kind of know the history, the background, you're right. I think it was actually October. It was probably right around, Halloween. I remember my family goes and does the Army 10 miler in DC, and we talked about that a little bit. So it's funny how things work. Whenever I see the name StrataPT, it usually comes with Sarasota. And for those who don't know, I'm from Sarasota originally, and I was lucky enough to be a fly on the wall watching what Kim and Adam were doing with StrataPT. Gosh, I don't even know how many years ago. It's a lifetime ago. It really is. So to hear that news about where you guys are going, I mean, when you and I first talked over a year ago, just to hear what had come from StrataPT, what Kim and Adam had been able to do, you coming on the team, it's incredible. And now you guys have done this fundraising, which I'm just so excited to see what happens. I do have questions for you because you use language and you say things about your business, your profession, kind of your niche that other people don't say. And so I want to hear a little bit about your perspective on this. So one of the things that I think just kind of takes everybody by surprise is you talk about transparency in billing. And you guys actually have on your website reimbursement rates that are coming from pretty much all 50 states, real numbers. I know people, therapists want to know, where is this information coming from? Why are you the only ones sharing this information? And is this part of kind of the core mission of what you guys are trying to do when you say we want to bring transparency out?
Yeah, well, okay, short answer, yes, it's real. That data is real. That data comes from we say real time. It's actually probably delayed anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes just because of some technical things that we do. But it comes through our systems because we're collecting that money on behalf of our clients. And so we just expose the feed to it. And so if you sense any hesitation, by the way, it's that this playbook that I've been running here at Strata is actually, for the people that have known me for the last 10, 15, 20 years, they'll come up to me and say, "Oh, you're running the playbook again." And I say that like out of respect, is that this idea that like, a lot of people say they're transparent. A lot of companies say they're transparent. And yet they aren't. And I know this is a bad example, but and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but when you drive down the street, you're dropping the kids off at school, you drive down the street and you see like a contractor's truck or a contractor's van, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I always kind of joke to myself, if somebody puts that customer service is their differentiator, if you have to say that it's the differentiator, that's the problem, And so our strategy for years, not only here and what I'm doing at Strata, but in general, my strategy has always been show, don't tell. And so in this particular case, I can give you all the nerdy tech speak about why we do it. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, we have these real-time payments coming back through the systems, through all the payers. We're not yet in all 50 states for full transparency. I think we're in 45 states now. So pretty close. But at the same time, we just thought, hey, don't take our word for it. Just use our data. And we just publish it. If I see a stream of data anywhere, we will find a way to aggregate and anonymize it and then put it out there and let people do what they want. And I think, yeah,
Go ahead.
one of the coolest parts of that actually is sort of the unintended side effects. I've gotten emails from people that we don't know, people that are not clients of ours, and they'll say, hey, I used that data to renegotiate my payer contract. And that's what we want is for people to use that information regardless of whether or not they're a client of ours. That to me is a win. So the data is real, and it comes through our back-end systems that do all the magic, and we just basically pipe it to the front end so that people can do cool things with it and see where it goes.
And that's what I was going to reference. I know so many people that talk about other websites that are out there that'll share information, but it's really generalized information like, what does physical therapy cost in XYZ state? And it gives you these range of prices. But you're the only company I know that's sharing real numbers to the penny. And to know that this is basically virtually real-time data is just incredible. Now, I still don't understand, what does it mean when you say billing aware? You have a billing aware system. How do you translate that into language I can understand?
Okay, so this right here, I think, is the most important question, but I have to, before I answer it, I have to kind of share with you how I think about things. And not because I pretend to be right, but because, if you understand this, then you understand my point of view on this sort of stuff. So I promise I'll answer the question. Let's first back up and let me just share one of the many epiphanies that I had personally. I'm not speaking for the next 60 seconds. I'm going to speak as personal Paul, not as Strata Paul. A couple months ago, I had this epiphany, and it could basically be boiled down to this. And I'm going to ask this question in a rhetorical way, not to put you on the spot, but just so I can kind of tell the story. The epiphany that I had was, I was thinking back to Kodak. When I was a kid, I had a camera and I would get like rolls of film, and I was, and I took pictures, and every once in a while I would Like, you only had 35 pictures or whatever it was on that thing. And you had, anyway. Well, one day, about 20, 25 years ago, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. And I go back and I wonder, why did it fail? Well, it didn't fail because the executives missed. It's not like the executives didn't execute. They knew who they were going after. But here's the problem. They got beat because a new subcategory arose, cell phones that became cameras. And so they didn't get taken out from, a head-on hit. They got basically like they got eaten one chunk at a time, and camera sales started falling, right? Now, more recently, just to kind of solidify this idea, and then I'm going to answer your question, Weight Watchers. We're recording this in September of 2024. 3 years ago now, you can see the decline of Weight Watchers begin. Today, Weight Watchers is only worth 90% of what its market share was at the high point in 2021. Well, we have to ask ourselves, why did they drop? Well, in plain English, it's not because some other company in the space grew. It's because a subcategory appeared, and for whether we like it or not, it killed them. And that is the rise of Ozempic and drugs like that, where all of a sudden, again, not trying, people don't get crazy on me here. Like I'm not saying that's the right way to go. I'm just saying a new alternative popped up, and the people that just happen to be paying Weight Watchers tend to also gravitate towards those kinds of things. All right. Now let's come back to us. What are we and why is it so hard? The hard part of what we do is that we're sort of creating this new subcategory. Up until now, people have been trained in our industry to think about EMR, scheduling tools, RCM. There's all these different pieces of their practice. And for the last 15 years, if you look at the marketing in our industry, that's how it's been portrayed to them. So what does it mean? So for us, like what we sell essentially is a billing aware practice management system that has an integrated EMR. What in the world does that jargon mean? It means that we don't believe, number one, that you should have to pay for your software. But more importantly, number two, we believe that if your goal is to get paid, if your goal as a practice owner is to get paid, then every piece of software that your practice uses should be aware of its impact on billing. The easiest example I give people is like, you and I both know that if a patient walks in and is authorized for 6 visits, we know for sure we should not schedule the 7th visit without an authorization, without an additional authorization. We know that. Everybody would agree with me on this. But yet, it happens. Why does it happen? Well, turns out that third-party tool that you were using for scheduling doesn't understand the concept of authorizations. So in our world, we just, like, for example, we just build that right into our EMR, include it for free. So another, hot topic right now, for example, is RTM. RTM, everybody would agree, is a way to get better patient outcomes and more revenue for the practice. I don't disagree with that. But we're starting to see more and more of our clients using third-party tools, spending anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 a year in additional fees for that. Our view is let's bring it into our product roadmap, build it right in, and provide it for free. So billing where it's still a mouthful, and I think the big heavy lift for us over the next couple of years is going to be to figure out how to make that resonate with people, how to take people from that conceptual idea of lots of different things they need to run their practice back to this idea of what is like, if you ask me what my intuition is on this, I think billing aware is probably the language we'll use now. But my intuition is that over time, we'll start to figure out how to get people to understand that we can give them the financial or the operating system for a profitable practice. And so it's a mouthful, but billing aware is that's the key differentiator that I think we haven't honestly figured out how to talk about just yet. But we'll iterate our way to figuring it out.
No, I love it. I mean, finding the words to express and convey what it is that you guys do, it's a challenge for every kind of innovative, new conceptual idea. Going back to a couple of things you said, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Kodak had the technology for digital photography and did nothing with it. Go to Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers now, I remember seeing Weight Watchers at $101 a share. It's under $1 a share today. If you look at what Weight Watchers is doing, they finally recognize the drugs and the pharmacology. Now they're buying companies that will allow them to bring physicians in to prescribe that kind of medication. They're playing the catch-up game, and you can't win playing the catch-up game. Like, you guys have been pushing, and this is where that bomb is going to come in, that $25 million bomb I want to hear about. You guys are pushing the forefront. One other example that I think is interesting when I think of you guys versus other companies, I think of Elon Musk, I think of Tesla. And I remember sitting there listening to an interview, and they were talking about Tesla being a technology company, not a car company. And even though they sell cars and they're more profitable and their market cap just blows everybody else out of the water, he fundamentally looks at his company as a technology company, and they solve problems with technology. And we know how many problems can be solved that way. So I feel like you guys coming at this problem, you're coming from such a different perspective. That's what's really exciting for me. Now, I know you guys didn't need the funding. I know you guys weren't, strapped for cash. So what does this infusion of not just capital, but also like bringing some new minds on board, bringing new players to the team, what does this do for you guys? But more importantly, what does it do for us, for the therapist, for the profession, for the people that are using the platform?
I'll give you I'm super candid about all this stuff, and I just want to make sure I say this in a respectful way to everybody. So here's what I would say. First off, I've learned over the years there's certain things I'm good at, and then I've also learned there's a lot that I'm not good at. And again, in this particular moment, I'm going to speak as personal Paul, not Strata Paul. Look, we accomplished quite a bit in the last 2 years. And I would say, particularly from a marketing and a growth standpoint, I would say brute force is what got us there. Brute force in terms of just trying to document everything we learned, publish it, make some noise, all those things. But let's also be realistic about what I don't have. I've never been a PT. I've never been a practice owner. I admittedly might be a little bit too rough around the edges to hang around at respectable conferences and things like that. So one of the gaps there for us was to kind of figure out, well, how do we, maybe bring in some people that actually think about the vision the way we do, but also have a little bit of been there kind of experience within the industry. And so I'm not trying to be like a commercial for Council Capital or anything like that. I think they would feel comfortable with me saying that, we probably met with 20 or 30 different firms over the course of a couple months. And I don't know how to explain this to anybody in a truthful way, but my recollection of it is that about half of the decision to go with Council was, the financial terms, hey, whose term sheet looks better? But the other half was just sitting there across the table and just oversharing our vision, almost to the point of trying to terrify people to see where we want to go, to see who leans in, to see who, I remember like one of the stories I would tell a lot when I was going through this process on a personal basis was I would say, look, when I started my first business 25 years ago, I had to take the title of my old Toyota 4Runner to the local small bank and give it to them in exchange for one of those black credit card swipey things. You remember those things?
I do.
And so what I would say to these investors as we were doing our fundraise now is I'd say, like, look, I think the next 3 to 5 years are about really expanding our footprint across PT, OT, and speech. And I think if we just do that, that will change a lot of lives. I mean, here are some examples. We would give examples of like what our customers would say. Like they got to give raises, they got to hire more people, they got to grow their empires, But I said, look, if we do that, it becomes the stepping stone to what I think could be very interesting as a 10 or 12-year target, which is, going back to the financial industry of e-commerce. I had to do a black credit card swipey thing. And then now in 2024, if you and I have a business idea right now, we could go start up a Stripe account and collect money in two minutes. And so, longer term, it's like, what if we could aim to be the Stripe for healthcare? That's like kind of the direction. So, coming back into this, back to your question, I think the thing is like, so much of fundraising lore is about like, it's like, it's on either extreme. It's like, oh, they were running out of money, they needed some money. Well, it's like, first of all, I've been doing investing for years. Nobody funds a company that's failing. Like, no money fixes that. On the other hand, like, there is no shortage of capital for growing companies. So you're really like trying to figure out, you're essentially like getting married to somebody, right? Because it's like, so I know I'm a little all over the place on this one in particular, but this was a big step for us because it prior to this point, we only answered to ourselves and to our customers. And now more so, we have to answer to our customers, and because that's we've embarked on this journey now, and I think that I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of straying from your question, and I think it's because I'm afraid to just tell you the answer here, which is like, I actually worry about time. I don't worry about money. I worry about time. And so this is probably not the answer that everybody's looking for, but when I just, and I'm just one part of this company, but when I sit here and think about it, it's like we accomplished a certain amount that I'm really proud of in the last 18 to 24 months. And then I can't help but think like, okay, if I just keep going at our current pace, there's a certain amount I think we'd accomplish. But time, I can't get time back. So what would it look like to actually get the right set of partners involved and just pour some fuel right into that proverbial rocket ship? I mean, look, I know we're not Elon Musk and we're not going to Mars. That's a very different mission. But here, this is one of those businesses where, when I was talking about it with my wife, I'm like, this is one of those rare businesses where, like, if you do it right, you can create a lot of jobs and make a lot of people here at Strata happy, but you can simultaneously help practice owners be more profitable, to give raises. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of a win-win. And I know that seems like a cliche, but that's I'm hesitating because it's like not the sexy answer everybody wants, but it's the truth. It's like, man, we did a lot in 2 years. Just imagine if we could pile drive into that now, and that's cool. So
You know,
I don't
what
know.
you said, what you said is what I always hear. It's not even about the money. It's about the people behind the money. It's about building the network and the connections. And then it's about the speed. It's about the time, compressing that time window. Like, the faster you can get things done, the more people you can help more quickly. It makes total sense. And that's the way, I grew up in a generation. My mom came from South America. She started the business herself. She earned every dollar she made by working herself. But if she would have understood kind of this new economy we live in, you start to realize the leverage of other people's network and time and efforts. You can really get things done so much quicker and, truthfully, so much better. Now, with that being said, kind of help us understand a little bit. I've been a vocal advocate against outsourced billing, because in my world, I started my practice back in 2002, not 22, 2002. At that time, the only options to outsource were individuals who were working, in a spare bedroom, who were basically on the verge of going out of business any day of the week. If they got sick, our billing shut down. Like, it was a disaster. It was horrible. They took a percentage of all revenue. They had zero risk. They had no involvement. And so I just came from an era that was so negative toward outsourced billing, that I couldn't even fathom switching my perspective. And if you go and look at my YouTube videos, even to the last couple of years, it was anti outsourced billing. Now I see a company like yours, and I don't really see other companies doing this. So I'm just going to focus on StrataPT right now. But I'm like, these guys aren't, somebody doing this as a hobby to make some extra money in a spare bedroom. Like, these guys have technology that I would never have access to. I couldn't build what you guys have built. The systems, the information, the awareness, like all of this stuff coming together, I just don't see it anywhere else in the market. And for the first time, and I'm saying this candidly, like, this isn't somebody telling me to hit these talking points. People used to say, look, if you don't get paid, we don't get paid, and this is a partnership. And I was like, pardon my French, because if I don't get paid, I lose $95, you lose $5. But now, for the first time, I'm like, I could see you guys being a genuine partner, a technology partner, bringing in resources and assets to grow my business, to scale my business in a way that I would never be able to do otherwise. And to your point, I have access to all the other EMRs on the market. I look at all the EMRs that are out there, and it is still so fragmented to the fact that even today, I'm like, why am I dealing with all of these different technologies just to get one job done? I can't just take my fax from a fax line, a digital fax line, and then put it on my computer, then upload it into my EMR, then get something to process the PDF and pull the information out. I have to have 10 different systems to do one simple thing because that's the way it's always been done. We just assume that's normal, So I know there's stuff you have to keep close to the vest. I totally get it. But what is kind of your vision looking forward? What is your vision for what the future PT clinic is going to look like, operate like? I mean, how can we bring technology for the first time, because it's still not there in my world, for the first time to actually make a therapist's life better? Because for me, it's just still extra work.
Yeah. So, okay. First off, you mentioned something about keeping stuff close to our chest. We don't do that. I mean, look, there's certain things we probably keep, non-disclosed because, hey, you probably shouldn't put employment contracts out there and things like that. Right. But as it relates to strategy, how we think about the product, what, customers can expect and all that, we are an open book. Um, when I think about your question there, let me start by saying something a little incendiary. Uh, if if all you needed was a outsourced billing team that had a huge amount of diligence and attention to detail, Strata would not need to exist. If all a practice owner needed was a great EMR that did everything and hopefully didn't raise prices every year and all that, then Strata wouldn't exist. If every part of your marketing stack as a practice owner did what it needed to do and understood, the complexities of medical reimbursement, we wouldn't need to exist. The problem is that healthcare gets more and more complex. And, all the people that do run all these various companies, EMRs, other RCMs, all that stuff, let's start from the position that they are good people. They're very smart people. But, like the big difference between us and them, I think, is that there's one thing that we believe that everybody else in these various industries would disagree with us on. And that is that we believe that every piece of software needs to understand how it ties back to what the reimbursement requires. Maybe the better way for me to explain this is to say that if you were to look at our product roadmap, particularly our customer-facing product roadmap, we try to tie every feature and every development back towards patients, visits, and units. So this is very different. Like I don't want to pick on our competitors, but for example, let's use the concept of no-shows. Well, look, that traditional RCM company doesn't know whether or not a patient showed up or not, has no idea. All they know is what claims you push through the system. Well, in our world, for example, we know that patient was put on the schedule, and we know if the time of the appointment passes, we know they didn't show up. If they didn't check in, they didn't show up. Well, now we can look at our systems and say, well, gosh, did they get an appointment reminder? Okay. Did they open it? Did they click to add it to their phone's, calendar? And I'm being a little like basic here, of course, right? But what I'm just trying to say is that like, if you were to look at our business individually, like if you looked at each component of our business individually, it might be hard to differentiate us from the various competitors of each part of that business. So for example, our EMR compared to other EMRs probably looks very similar. RCM business, same thing. If you were to part that out and look at it, along other RCM companies, it doesn't look that different, right? But when you tie it all together and you realize that everything is actually tied together, that's where the magic happens. And we haven't really figured out how to articulate that to other people. But, you bring up a good point though, that like, a lot of people, for example, what you just described there, you said RCM companies have come to you and said, hey, if we don't win, you don't win. And you're absolutely right. If they don't win, you're the one that misses payroll. you know, the way I think about it now is that, when I talk to a potential client or something like that, I'm like, look, you know, the reality is here's my payroll. I probably, let's see, we're probably at like 200K of payroll right now. And what I say to people is like, look, you don't have to go with us. Even if you don't go with us, just use our public benchmarks and make sure you get whatever you want or whatever you deserve, and more power to you. But if you do want to go with us, then look, here's what you're getting with that. And that includes a team now, as of today, of 46 people, as of today, that all have a duty to do their part to make sure that our systems are doing the right thing, our product roadmap matches, and all that stuff. So I don't know, like what you're talking about though, this is the real challenge we're going to have over the next couple of years, is to figure out, how do we really tell this story? It's like, how do you deprogram or differentiate from what people's mental models are? I don't know the answer yet, by the way, but I think we're going to just iterate our way there.
Well,
One of the things
I
okay.
think you're going to get there with the media content you guys are putting out, because by far, head and shoulders above everyone else, your YouTube channel, your podcast, the people you're interviewing, like, you guys are setting the new standard for what, what people are striving for in their media content. So I think that's going to be a huge element for you guys, obviously getting the word out, building a community around what you guys are doing. But I've got a hard question for you. I was thinking about this. So what do you see in the profession, PT, OT, SLP? Let's just lump the three disciplines together. Like, what do you guys see that nobody else apparently sees? Because when you talk to other people, leaders in the profession, they look at declining reimbursement, they look at difficulty hiring, they look at barrier after barrier after barrier of growing their business. Yet you guys are putting all your eggs in this basket, when obviously you could take something like this to other disciplines, other professions. What do you see going on? What's going to happen to PT, OT, SLP 5 years, 10 years down the road that maybe a less optimistic individual isn't seeing right now?
Well, you were not kidding about the hard question. So I'll just throw this out there, and let's see how much heat I get for it later on. Um, okay. So look, we started years ago as an RCM company. I think if you were to randomly pick 5 people on a team, give them 2 glasses of wine and say, what in the world do you do? They'd say, we do RCM. I think now, if you were to do that and pick another random set of 5, I think they would tell you that we see ourselves as a technology company that happens to provide this billing aware system and RCM and all that stuff. But let's talk about where you're going with this. Okay, so I'm going to talk above my pay grade here, and I'm welcome. You can heckle, ridicule, whatever. Anybody watching this later, you can totally heckle, ridicule, whatever. Look, what I see. People are probably looking for like really fancy words. Let me just kind of be myself here. When I turn on CNBC, around the time that the U.S. government releases jobs reports and employment reports and stuff like that, it's hard to not notice that for that week or two prior to the federal reports, ADP and Paychex and all these large payroll companies use their aggregate data to shape policy. They give it all away. They say, hey, look, we think the report's going to say this because our thousands or tens, hundreds of thousands of customers are telling us or showing us this many payrolls and stuff like that. So when I think about where we're headed, here's the big broad strokes. Depending on who you talk to, healthcare spending is 18, let's just round it up, 20% of GDP. And then just in big broad strokes, maybe 10% of that is, or 10% of that 18% is MSK related. And then you go all the way down that waterfall, and somewhere down there, way down in the bottom of that is what's left over for these outpatient PTs and OTs and speech, right? We got the data. And I think longer term, the big bold question is like, at what point do we become maybe a player in helping shape the policy around this? For example, most PT, and again, I'm speaking in broad strokes here, but most PT, OT, and speech is seen as like a second line of defense. You are referred to that level of care by somebody upstream, or that sort of thing. But the data, and look, we're a small player and I'm still new to this industry, but I look at the data, it's like, wait a second, I can see all the CPT codes. I can see all the notes coming through the system for tens of thousands of patients a day. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, hey, I'm no doctor, I admit. But hey, if this patient had gone into PT, for example, a little sooner, the outcome may have been better. And so I don't know how to articulate this to you, Tony, but I guess I would just say that the big bold bet I would make, and I'll preface this by saying that I don't think Strata will be able to lead the way on this, but I think we can use our data and our advocacy to help push it along. Is this idea of how do you make PT, OT, and speech potentially become frontline, almost like primary care? And I think the more people that see the underlying data, the more I think legislators and the people that write the rules will have to come to the same conclusion that even me as a untrained person can kind of see. Like, I'll give you an example of what this means, by the way, for our product roadmap, because I know I'm talking big hand wavy stuff. Let's talk about product roadmap, for example. Um, when you as a patient walk into a Strata powered clinic, you're using Strata's kiosk and online check-in as a patient to fill out your forms and your templates and all that, right? Well, first of all, let's talk about the easy stuff. If we know that you're on a Google or an Android or an Apple phone and you have Apple Pay or Android Pay enabled, you should be able to pay your copay via that in addition to your normal credit card. That's a no-brainer. Everybody understands that, right?
No. You have to you have to pause right there. I was waiting for a good spot to interrupt you. First, you said when you walk in, you're using a StrataPT kiosk. I can't even tell you. And believe me, I talk to a lot of private practices of various sizes. Very few are optimized to that level. Very few have a kiosk that or iPads or anything that allow clients to use that kind of technology for their initial check-in and their initial information. Very few are using EMRs that allow them to email their admission forms and collect information before the patient even comes face to face. I think you are in this silo, which is amazing, of people that are using your technology. But I mean, the depth of, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but the depth of ignorance within the profession runs so deep, you can't even see over the edge of that cliff, because I'm shocked to this day, every day I'm shocked at how far behind so many of our peers are. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. This is fair because I live it and breathe it every day. So I think of this as normal, but you're right. Most practices either don't have a kiosk or some sort of thing like that. And if they do, it's some third party thing that APIs into their EMR, which is neither of those things are billing aware. So they don't actually know, like, okay, well, it scanned my driver's license, but for what? Well, just for your records, I guess. But in our case, we're like, well, let's run OCR or optical character recognition on that and start to fill in data, right? And hey, if we see you're on an Apple device, when it says, hey, your copay is $20, you can either pay with Apple Pay if that's on your device, or it's got your preloaded card. It's like these are things we take for granted, but because we care about these things. I mean, every morning I look at a report that includes patient liability across all of our clients. It's a report I look at every morning. But to go one step further, if I know that you're on an Apple device, and this is not yet, what I'm about to say is not valid or active on the system yet, but this is a way I think about this as a product roadmap and where this industry is heading. If I know on that device that you are using an Apple Watch or anything that's connected to your Apple Health Kit, why don't I give you a prompt to connect that data to the clinician? When my watch gives me a little notice, it says, "Hey, Paul, you might want to go see a PT. Your left knee or your gait has changed." My watch doesn't know whether it's my knee or my hip or whatever. It just knows your gait has changed. Why shouldn't Tony Maritato's practice be notified of that? And your practice, since you're using our system anyway, why don't we just say, "Hey, Tony's got an available slot at 3:30 today. Would you like to take it?" So when we really think about it, that's what it means to map all the way back to patients, visits, and units. And so I think this is the other controversial thing that we believe that a lot of other people don't think about, is that we believe that our businesses are actually consumer focused companies that should be um, enabled to market to their local communities in a tech-enabled way, which I know is a mouthful, right? But the fact is that like, practice owners are sitting there right there with a patient. Like, let's use the patient's own data with their consent to help encourage that patient to come back to you. Um, I know I'm kind of going long on this, but even like little subtle things. We think about copywriting. Copywriting. Show me some other EMR or RCM or whatever you want to call us that thinks about this. But here's the analogy I use with my team. I'm like, look, if you were walking down the street and you saw a $20 bill on it on the floor, would you pick it up? Everybody says yes. Everybody says yes. And so then I say to them, okay, if we know that a patient is authorized for 6 visits but has only arrived for 5, most of our competitors do nothing on that front. Absolutely nothing. The very few, and even if we were just half-assing this, we would say, hey, you have a 6th visit, you should come. Well, now what if we copywrote that a different way? Hey, your insurance company owes you another $100. That's available to you to go get that knee fixed. When would you like to come in? Those are two very subtle. I know it sounds kind of weird, but this is how we think about things. It's like ultimately it's about patients' visits. Actually, if you look at our internal dashboards, the top 3 metrics we look at every day is patients, visits, units. It's that serious. Revenue and all these other things are trailing indicators. They mean nothing. They mean that we did something good 4 months ago. But ultimately, I can actually, when we do a deploy every night, I can see, okay, that was supposed to affect visit count by this much percentage what we thought it would do. What did it do? And that's how we think about it. And that's the subtle thing that people don't think about. And I think that's where the industry is headed, is that like, well, anyway, I'm rambling. I've been living and breathing this for years. Oh, well, I shouldn't say years, but not, for 2 now, I should say. And the biggest barrier to me, and I'm just speaking in my personal capacity, has been this imposter syndrome. I'm sitting here thinking like, this is so obvious to me. Like, we can use code and technology to streamline X or Y. And we can do it in a way where a customer doesn't need to think about 17 different, vendors and integrations and stuff. So from our view, it's like, every time we see our customers tell us about a certain product they're using, eventually they say it enough where we're like, yep, that's going on the roadmap. Let's hire against it. So you can already see where I'm going with this, with AI and all these other things. It's like we're seeing patterns in the customer base of people asking these things. We can see when they do these like kind of browser-based integrations, what they're doing. And after a certain amount of usage, we see like what works and what doesn't for them. And then inevitably it makes it back to our roadmap because it ties back in some way to patients, visits, or units. So it's not
So I
secret.
think this is where this is what I needed to hear, because I was like, God, what do these guys see? What am I missing? What am I not seeing? Now, for me, my personal experience, I look outside the profession for new ideas. I look outside the profession for innovation because I don't see any new ideas or innovation within the profession. One of my favorite YouTube channels, Peter, I'm going to mess up his last name, Diamandis. He was talking about wearables. He was talking about tracking. He was talking about real-time information that, like a real-time glucose monitor as an example. You just said something that I genuinely have never heard somebody say before. And there are very few things that people say that I haven't heard people say before. But you said, why don't we have, some sort of tracker that notifies us of changes in our body and automatically recommends we make an appointment with our favorite physical therapist? I'm paraphrasing, but I was just thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, why don't we have something that picks up on different walking patterns, movement patterns, maybe movement deficiencies? Like, okay, I have a vitamin D deficiency. I need more sunlight, or I need a supplement. Well, I have a movement deficiency. Let me get out there and see what's going on. That's not where the profession is going. That's where you guys are going. And hopefully that's where you guys are going to pull the profession. I think that's a very different mindset. And not to beat up on my peers, but I think too many of us are too busy. Therapists are just swamped. They're in the clinic. They're understaffed. They're overworked. They're underpaid. We know all the normal complaints. So they don't have breathing room to really think about these things. And that's where I go back to what I said earlier, a partner versus a technician. hire somebody to do your billing. That's a technician. Like that's commoditized. That's out the window. But you guys sound like at least you're a partner. You're like looking for new ways to innovate, looking for new ways to grow and expand the profession. I know we're getting close to the time. I want to talk about media. And one of the people that just blew me away on your channel was Dana Strauss. I think that's how you say her last name.
Yep.
I had never heard of her before, never seen any of her content. She came on, you mentioned primary care PT. She talked about having a seat at the table. She brought a perspective that was genuinely the first time I ever heard it. And the first time that I was like, yes, this is exactly what we need to be doing. I already complimented you guys. You're doing amazing on the media front. Why are you putting so much time, effort, money into growing media? What would be some of the advice or recommendations you have for therapists that maybe can scrape together a couple minutes and dip a toe into the world of media?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Dana, by the way, because I told you at the beginning, and now this is even more proof that I'm not making this up. We run our playbook very transparently. So, um, you know, even my conversations with Dana are kind of like we're just recording our conversation about, where does this go and stuff like that. And so you can kind of already get a sense of where we're going in terms of what I think we should be doing in terms of advocacy and things like that. Um, so if the question is what can practice owners do, I think this is such a hard question because it obviously, you and I, for example, with our respective content, we're sort of, I don't want to say this the wrong way. I guess I'll just say with StrataPT, my customers can be anywhere in the United States. So for me to be able to like create content, it's relevant to a very large, broad part of the country. So it's a little bit easier to hit record every week and put the content out there. I think where it gets a little bit tricky if we're talking about, what can practice owners do, I think it starts from the perspective of like, where are the eyeballs in your neighborhood or in your region usually going? And then from there, it's like, okay, what you got to think about like what you're good at, what you like to do, and how you like to put out the media. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I feel like I'm skirting it, but I think the reality is that, social media is sort of the future. It's not going anywhere. And I think the reality is that you can't afford to not do it anymore. I don't. I'm shying away from the question because like how you market your local practice in Arkansas is a little bit different than how you might do it in Manhattan. So, but the principles are still the same. You can't afford to not market. Now, the big question is between those two examples is where are the eyeballs going? Well, I think we could all agree that newspapers and things like that are not where the eyeballs are. They probably are somewhere in social media. The real question is what are the memes and what are the flavors of social media that resonate in the geography you're in? And we'll kind of go from there. I would say from my perspective, though, and this is entirely self-serving, but I don't mean it that way, is this idea that like, let me tell you something that like is kind of non-obvious here, by the way, on this topic. Most companies at this stage of revenue that we're at will typically move marketing under sales. They'll basically keep it far away from the CEO because it's not it's considered like an expense. Here, I keep marketing and sales separate, 100% separate, because if you let marketing run sales, nothing ever happens. If you let sales run marketing, then everything's a discount. Everything's buy now. And so in this case, we run marketing and sales completely separate. And maybe there's a lesson here for these practice owners as well. Here's what I say to the marketing guys. So I say to the marketing team, your job is to help me create interesting content. Let's drive eyeballs. And we'll just know based on impression count that it's working. Sales, your job is to be 100% inbound. I do not want to be known as the company that's like cold emailing random people, doing anything that's like shady. You're sitting there waiting for inbound leads. That's it. I know it sounds crazy, but ultimately that's how we build trust. We give away so much content that people are like, what in the world? How are they giving this for free? And then somehow, could be 60 days later, 2 years later, the proverbial straw breaks the camel's back, whatever it might be. Their in-house biller retires, or they're getting close to missing a payroll. And through that trust that we give, we just give, we give data, we give content, we give all this stuff. They'll ask to talk to somebody, and it's just a consultation now. And it's the long game. And so I think there's some takeaways there for local practices as well. Maybe it's to say that like the media or the medium doesn't really matter unless you actually understand the idea. The underlying idea is that we're in a world where all of our clients are busy, all of our patients are busy. They're thinking about other things, kids' baseball practice and whatever else. Why should they remember you or me when they got so many other things going on? That's the tricky question. And if you can answer that question, then how you distribute, whether it's through content or newsletters or sponsorships, that's totally up to you. It doesn't have to be like turning on a camera like this. The punchy way I would say this is that if more practice owners embraced the idea that they are in the local marketing business, if they just embraced that, then we could truly have the conversation of, should they be doing a podcast, or should they be doing a YouTube show, or should they be doing a TikTok, or should they be sponsoring every little league within 50 miles? But it all starts from, do you or do you not believe that you're a local marketing company? Just one last thing, I'll just say this as a hint. When I think about our marketing efforts, I think of this little entity we've called Strata Studios, and it's like, what would the Barstool of sport, what Barstool became to sports, what would that look like in our industry? Like, how do you actually start to think about payroll, putting content creators on the payroll, but separating editorial and saying, you can talk about anything you want. It's kind of like HubSpot when they bought all the podcasts and stuff like that. It's like, okay. Barstool took a different angle, but how do you just ultimately like empower a lot of creators and give them distribution? So anyway, I could ramble about this for hours and hours, but that's on the roadmap, is to think about like, okay, Strata Studios, but then we have this other like conceptual idea, Strata Local. Like, we have a lot of extra resources here where we're pretty good at pay-per-click marketing and all that. We know that our customers are spending money on some companies that you and I both know in terms of like local marketing for practices. What if we just made it part of our deal? It's just all free in the system, and just divert your ad spend. Let us divert your ad spend for you, but there's no fees for the service anymore, because I can drive patients and visits and units. I can tie it all back.
Yeah. Once again, it's just such a different paradigm. It's not what billing used to be. But like, what's the saying? It's not your grandma's billing company. It's true. Like, this is just, it's such a paradigm shift for where we came from. I hope you guys keep doing what you do.
I feel like I need to send a message to my team and make sure that you're not reading our emails somewhere. There's no way you would have known this, but I was doing a team offsite last Thursday and Friday. And there was probably a 1 hour section where I had everybody in a room, and I was like, guys, we need to stop with this idea. Like, people seem like, even you, no disrespect or anything like that, because you're not wrong. I think like people think we're an RCM company. And so when you think that way, now you're comparing us to that outsourced team in Bangalore, for better or for worse. That's what you're doing, right? Or whether it's that mom and pop in Idaho, it's RCM versus RCM. And I said to the team, like, as we build out our customer success organization, I want our customers' experience to be about the holistic view of what they're getting. RCM is an important piece, but should be like 10% of it.
Yeah.
Because all this other stuff comes with it, but more importantly, all this other stuff determines, the ultimate outcome. So anyway, that's probably a subject for a different topic or a different show at some point, but we're just getting started. I do not want to make fundraising like the thing that we, do often. That's part of the reason why it was so large, was to not have to do this again. But this will be the first and the last time, hopefully, you hear about any sort of fundraising at Strata. And anything beyond this is, hey, here's the roadmap. Here's patients, visits, units. Here's the state of PT in this country. Boom, boom, boom. And let's make it more about the clinic owners and the clinicians that work there and the front desk and the patients, and see where it goes.
Well, that's amazing. Paul, I want to thank you for spending an hour with me. I'm not sure when people are going to be able to see this, but just so everybody knows, like, you're going to be at PPS in Washington, D.C., 2024. I'll be there. We're going to be floating around. We're going to be doing stuff. I look forward to getting a chance to shake your hand and meet you in person along with everybody else.
Likewise, we will be there, and this episode will go live before that. So hopefully we'll catch some people's attention too. But yeah, looking forward to seeing you next week there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I appreciate you taking time to do this. There's a hat tip in here to you somewhere. You were too humble to say it, but you were also too naive to say no to me, or maybe you were too nice to say no to me last year. And I learned a lot from it, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. StrataPT is a single EMR platform and revenue cycle management service for physical, occupational, and speech therapy practices that helps you achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate. If you'd like to learn more about StrataPT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.